First, we had the Great Resignation, then we had quiet quitting, then we had quiet firing, and now the latest employment trend is career cushioning. What the heck is this, and should you care? Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I want to talk about the latest flavor of the month and career trends, and this one is called career cushioning. Now, if you don't know what career cushioning is, I'm going to break it down for you in this video and talk about whether or not you should try it yourself. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-related content just like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You might also want to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future posts. First, let's break down the last 2 years of what's been going on in the job market or the employment market as a whole to see how we arrived at this latest concept. As we all clearly recall, back in 2020, we had our last major economic downturn, and this was a result of the pandemic. And in my opinion, a lot of the employers at that period of time had a knee-jerk reaction and laid off a bunch of employees that they probably shouldn't have. And that had a rippling effect through the rest of the workforce, because essentially what happened was the people who were remaining were required to take on all the additional work burden of the people who were just forcibly exited. With that, all the stress and all the long, hard hours, and a mantra of you should just be happy to have a job was kind of pervasive in the employment market at that time. Because as you're a job seeker looking in that market, nobody was hiring. Feels a little bit like today. But there was also employers who were demanding more from their employees and cutting back on all kinds of expenses so that they could squeeze as much out of this employment event, which the pandemic allowed them to do. During that period of time, we started having people getting very burnt out, and they started to reevaluate what they really wanted in life. And even some of the people who were displaced started to really think, I worked all these hours and all these years for a company to unceremoniously be shown the door. And then the people who were remaining started to wonder if this was really the type of work that they wanted to do. And so this phenomena of the Great Resignation wave started to hit. You couldn't turn on the news or log into LinkedIn without seeing another article about it. In fact, I did a few videos myself describing the phenomenon from my perspective. But that was the first major event that I saw, the first major employment trend that I saw in the market for this new wave of how we're approaching work, or this new approach to work. So this pendulum I talk a lot about in my channel, pendulum swinging back and forth. It was buried with the employer for the longest time. And then as we went into the Great Resignation, where people started to step back and all of a sudden demand screams back, and industry tries to react to it by saying, uh-oh, we don't have enough people to do this work. Everybody's wanting our products and services now. And suddenly you've got a disengaged workforce who is essentially resigning the Great Resignation. So the pendulum swung forcibly the other way, and it was buried with a extreme job seeker buyer market. And if you lived through that, it was the heyday of job seeking. You couldn't trip out your front door without landing over an opportunity. People were getting raises left and right. People were leaving opportunities because it was just too good not to. And so you had a lot of people moving around. And in some cases, that actually dislodged some people who were in pretty stable work environments, but wanted to test the waters with this really fun new labor market. So they ended up leaving jobs that they were pretty comfortable in for a long period of time to move into more risky opportunities for the sake of collecting a better paycheck. And who can blame them? But some of the people who didn't leave sat back and started to look at quiet quitting as an option. These people were burned out, yet didn't want to leave their job. And the risk of scaling back wasn't that threatening because there were so many job opportunities out there. So that was the quiet quitting period that you've heard so much about. And I know that there's a lot of negativity associated with that, and rightfully so. Then we had the quiet firing as the pendulum then started to come back to, I would say, neutral, where employers started to regain a little bit more power in the marketplace. So hiring started to slow down. And then employers started to look at their workforces and say, if we don't want to outright fire somebody, but we want to encourage them to quit, there's a concept called, or the phenomena called quiet firing. And again, I made a video about that as well. So you can check out all these videos in my feed if you want to know more about them. So here we are today as I record this video, and it is in December of 2022. And the market is still shaky, and it's moving more in the direction of an uncertain labor market. The pendulum is unfortunately seeming to swing more and more towards the employer. Now, I will say in an asterisk, the overall labor market still is showing signs of strength in general. However, certain industries, obviously tech is one of them, has really been hit hard over the last few months. And I expect that we'll see that spread to other parts of the economy as we go forward. In fact, there was a recent study done of 722 executives through PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the results are pretty shocking. And one of the things that was surveyed was their outlook on talent in their organization. And what they said was, despite the concern of their ability to hire and retain the right talent, some companies are starting to streamline their workforce. And 50% of respondents are reducing their overall headcount, even as business leaders remain concerned about hiring and retaining that talent. So what that's showing is that companies are starting to right size. They maybe overhired during the boom or tried to overhire. And in some cases, they are scaling back. And again, in tech, we're seeing huge layoffs through most of the major, it's a who's who of who's being laid off or who's laying off. The proof is in the pudding. It is happening in industry. And whether or not this will continue into 2023 throughout other industries remains to be seen. There are some indicators to me that I'm interpreting that look like we could potentially be in for a rocky 2023. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm paying attention to the market indicators. Nonetheless, we see companies instituting hiring freezes, reducing overall headcount, or the lowering and dropping of sign-on bonuses and other associated perks that we saw so commonly during this heyday of this boom, this hiring boom. And unfortunately, we're seeing 44% that are rescinding offers or canceling jobs altogether. So all of this stuff is bringing us to the latest employment trend that is emerging, which is career cushioning. So essentially what it says is that you should be planning proactively by cushioning the possibility of losing your job. The career cushioning comes in a lot of different flavors. It could be something as simple as updating your LinkedIn profile, or maybe updating a resume that's out of date. Or it could be going and looking on the latest job postings to see what's out there and see what employers are asking for. And you should be doing that anyway. And that's probably what a lot of people have been doing throughout their careers. But there are some people who are apathetic and have been very comfortable in their jobs and don't think that it could happen to them. And those are the people that are most at risk. But career cushioning could also be building your networks actively. So it could be soliciting the right kinds of people to find the right networks that could actually help you. It could even be starting to apply to jobs or reaching out to some recruiters in your network in order to start getting your resume out there for soft feelers. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're in an active job search. So essentially what you're doing, you're trying to set up a safety net, and it's likened to dating. And I don't necessarily agree with this romantic context, but cushioning is a concept where if you're going to break up with somebody, you already have a little side action going on, or you're building a side action that you could land softer in order to make that breakup a little easier. So hopefully none of you are practicing that, but let's face it, it does happen. So in the context of our job, it's really not any different. We are trying to take proactive steps to ensure that we are protecting ourselves. Now, in the context of having a job, I'm fully in favor of taking proactive steps to make sure that you're protected, because we have to act like a free agent. And I have this mantra all throughout my website. You could probably repeat after me. We have to act like a free agent. We have to do what's best for ourselves in our careers. And you should never be caught off guard in the event that there's a layoff, because if you're doing career cushioning and you're doing all of these other proactive steps, career coaching is not just something that you do once when you need a job and then you forget about it. All of this stuff that I talk about on my channel should be stuff that you're regularly implementing and doing consistently if you're truly serious about getting to the top of your profession. Because then you won't have to deal with as many of these issues, these hiccups in the road, or the hiccups will be just that. They'll be hiccups. They won't be huge craters that you fall in. Rather, they'll be inconveniences that you'll get around quickly because you'll have already been prepared. So that's essentially what career cushioning is. Now, I don't think that this is a new concept. This isn't some earth-shattering thing, and I think that there's probably some think tanks out there that want to put little labels on every employment movement. So I think career cushioning is probably falling into that category, because I think a lot of people have already done this anyway. If you watch my channel, you probably have already done it yourself, because again, I think like a free agent. That's kind of my mantra. But if you're sitting there watching people all around you, your network, maybe in your own company, your own department, getting laid off, and you're sitting there going, oh man, is it going to be me next? You can't help but be a little bit nervous and not want to take some proactive steps. So should you practice career cushioning? The answer is 100% yes. You should be acting like a free agent and taking those proactive steps to start setting yourself up to succeed in the event that you get caught in an unplanned income disruption. because essentially we have to take control of our own career trajectory. Now, if you're somebody that wants to start practicing this, what can you start doing? Here's some things that I would start to suggest if you want to practice a quiet career cushioning. First thing I would do is I would be updating my profile, my LinkedIn. I would be making sure that everything looks nice and tidy there, that I have an optimized profile. If you don't know how to do that or what recruiters look for, I did create a course called Unlocking LinkedIn that you can check out that walks you through how to do that, how to use the LinkedIn platform from a recruiter's perspective so that you can understand how we think and how we screen and how we find candidates. The second thing I'd be doing is building networks on the LinkedIn platform, building active networks of people who could potentially help you. And again, the Unlocking LinkedIn course will also help you with that as well. And I would make sure that my resume is current because you don't want to be scrambling if you get the notice that you're being laid off and trying to get your resume in order. It's just a lot of extra stress that you don't need at that period of time. The third thing I'd be doing is taking a collective look at what it is that you truly want in your career and starting to take those proactive steps. So if you're somebody that's truly not happy doing what you're doing, start to think about what would make you happy and what steps you would need in order to get there. And take stock of your current situation, take stock of your current skill set and where you potentially gap, and start to put together a plan. Because if you can do that while you're gainfully employed, it's going to be a lot less stressful for you in the long run. And that'll also help you as you're doing an active job search because you'll be able to eliminate positions that don't fit your core values of what you're truly trying to accomplish in your career. So the ebbs and the flows of this labor market are ever changing. And I personally find it very fascinating. It's a little bit scary if you're on the inside, but it is very fascinating. And I will be continuing to pay attention to the trends that are coming out of the labor market. So if you want the latest and the greatest, make sure you follow along this channel. And if you need more help in your job search, that is what I specialize in. And I have a website that you can go and check out that has all these resources, and there's some training courses in there. So it's lifeafterlayoff.com, and I encourage you to go check that out. Hey, I appreciate you watching this video. And in conclusion, I would encourage you to start thinking like a free agent and taking the necessary steps, and maybe that career cushioning would be in your best interest. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.